Hello, welcome back. All right, today we'll talk about proportion as a principle of design and what it means and all that fun stuff. And then I'll talk about the proportion project. And then I'm going to talk about the importance because uh, doing those sketches for the two projects that we're working on for both the poster and for the designer project. And we always hear, like, oh, I can't draw, I can't sketch, blah blah. But getting those ideas out on paper and then bringing that into the design will help you so much. And I've got some examples. I didn't have as many as I thought I had. This is some goofy stuff you'll see that I work on the side, some holiday stuff I've done. But to show that, like, I literally do this like all the time. I'll do like even the quickest of quick sketches gives you an idea. And when you bring that into the computer, it just makes starting the design so much easier rather than starting with a blank canvas and being like, oh, I got to start looking for stuff. Like, there it is. Like, you have your sketch in there. You're looking at your sketch. You're like, all right, this is what I need to do. And this is where it needs to go. So I'll talk about that as well. So without further ado, let's double check, do the student preview, start preview. We are on week 7, part 1, and proportion. All right, let's do it. Open it up. All right, proportion. For the most part, it's the size difference between things. And for the most part, bigger attracts attention, right? Like if you have a page and you have something really big on the page and nothing else is big, we're going to read that first. Let's do our little fun little example here is, look right here. The proportion, it's not really even the size. It's the thickness. So that becomes the proportion part, is the thickness of this text. So it's bold. This is bold. This isn't bold. So the proportion of this is bigger than this. And so I read it. I read it better. The proportion of this text. It's bolder. I read it first. So proportion, just in general, is the easiest way to get attention about a subject matter within a graphic design piece. It can be overdone. It can be underdone. There's a joke that goes around, hopefully in the graphic design community as a whole, and it's from the client side. And it's whenever you feel like whenever you do a design, you show it to the client, and like their first comment is, can you make the logo bigger? And there's even like memes about make the logo bigger. There was a YouTube like video, like this rock song somebody made. It's called Make the Logo Bigger. And it's just something that happens. Like, the client wants to see their logo first when you do a design. And so they're always asking to make the logo bigger, which then as designers, we're like, well, no, but like, subtle is good and your logo doesn't need to be really big. Like, you try to explain like the sophistication behind the design, and they're like, well, but that sounds good, but can you make it bigger? And you're like, oh man. So there's times where like it feels like your design went from like really cool and sophisticated to like, oh, now it's just a big blocky mess because it's got a giant logo on it because that's what the client wanted, blah blah blah. So that's proportion. They want people to see that logo first, but it's actually, what's the message first? What are we trying to speak to first? And we do that with size and scale. We do that with proportion. I get that's the easiest way to say it. Like, there's no way around it. It's just relative size to different things, but we can work in different ways. Your project is going to be reverse proportion. You can make interesting things happen by breaking rules too. You can, there's optical illusions are all about changing the reference and maybe in size and scale to things that, what do you see first? What do you see second? So you can break the rule and have fun with it as well when you're dealing with proportion, scale, and size within a design overall. So it's, again, with, I guess maybe with all of these, knowing about them, knowing them, and that's why we do like one every class it's very important. I used to do all of these within a week and be like, just do it all, and then we wouldn't refer back to them. But I think it's very important to kind of like always remember, like, how am I sizing, how am I scaling things, or harmony, or like, I'm using line in this, like, am I using it correctly? So you kind of go back. You don't always think about it, but you go back to these things and how you use them, and it is important and fun. So yeah, but are you thinking about it with every design? Maybe not everything in every design, but you think about it. Now, the golden ratio. People go nuts over the golden ratio. It's a beautiful idea of scale and proportion that derives from nature, and it's this 1.68, like a square box, and then you make 1.68 smaller and a 1.68 smaller, and then they reduce down. People go nuts. So I'm going to show it over here. I'll wait till I go over there because I have more examples, like how people go nuts about it. It is very cool. Do I ever design with it in mind? Never. Absolutely never. Do people do it? Maybe. Maybe there's somebody who starts off their designs with like a little thing like this, and they always want to design like that, but it gets you stuck. But where it comes in is design nerds who look at stuff and then like put that into it, and then like they dissect it, and then they put out like blog posts and internet articles about like this logo and how the golden ratio is used, and you kind of like roll your eyes and be like, no, I just thought of a design and I wasn't really thinking the golden ratio, but I'm glad it fits. If that all makes sense. Like, it's kind of funny when people really analyze stuff after the fact and you're the artist, you're like, no, that's not really what I was thinking, but I'm glad you found that. So we'll talk more about this because it's super cool. It's the Nautilus shell, it's all that stuff. It's very cool, but people get way into it. Hierarchy. Now, we talk about hierarchy all the time in graphic design, and it's a main one that you should now be thinking about within your poster and your graphic design project, graphic designer project, excuse me, is the hierarchy of scale. What's most important? Like when we're dealing with a poster that's supposed to tell us about an event, first thing we need to see is, what is the event? All right. What's the next important thing? It all can't be the same importance. If you have all the same importance, you just end up with a boring design, and then people just kind of read it. But you need to think about, in hierarchy of scale, like if somebody only saw it for like a blink of an eye, and you open and close your eyes, look at this screen. If you open and close your eyes, I remember hierarchy of scale. Why? It's bold, and it's longer than visual weight, so like it's the boldest thing on the page kind of, and that's what I see. When I look at your posters, what's the first thing I need to see? If I just glimpse at it, of course, I want to just know, like, it's a poster for this music festival. It's big, it's bold, it's like on top. Like, okay, great. I have been notified that there is this music festival. Great, because the hierarchy of scale put that biggest on the poster, and it's most important for me to know that there is a music festival. All the other stuff is secondary. All the other stuff is like, then we work with it like, well, what's next? So if I have 2 seconds to look at it, what would be secondary? In 3 seconds, and you think about it in that way. Like, if a person only have a minute to look at this, what are they going to take away? And if you're like everything, it's not true. We have to disseminate and look at it and be like, no, this is most important. This is how we do it. And proportion is how we do it, and then it goes in hierarchy of scale to visual weight. Visual weight. This text over this text. This text. There's a reason why we have bold. Bold reads better than thin. But if everything is always bold, which we'll get into, or you'll get into with me later on, and hopefully in typography, if you're taking typography, that there's some lessons I'm going to teach you, like, don't only typeset in bold, like, because once it's all bold, you lost the idea that it's bold. But here, the visual weight, this is important, this isn't important. You know, like, so we use that, we think about that. What do I want them to read? Well, this should be bold, this shouldn't. And also because reading bold text is a little bit harder than we think. So visual weight is huge when it comes to that proportion idea and what's most important. Aspect ratio. This is just a fancy version dealing with the relationship of width and height of an object or an image. It's good to understand aspect ratios. We don't have to do it anymore. There used to be, I think I may have told you guys about this, but maybe it was the other. I'm looking for an image. Back when I was learning design and illustration, we had these things. It was a proportion scale. And this is how we figured out how to scale up our thumbnails. Like, so if somebody's like, you know, it's a 24 by 36 poster, but we wanted to do smaller thumbnail sketches, we would use this machine here. It's not a machine, it's two pieces of plastic. And you'd be like, oh, you set it to 50%, and then you read from out to in. And it seemed super confusing, but for like 5-6 years of my life, I carried one of these with me whenever I was in school. You know, I was in design school, you know, like you are, and you carried this with you. Everybody had one of these, like in their little art box. Because remember, this was just on the verge of computers being in school. They didn't get computers in my school until I was a junior. So that's how long ago I took classes. But everybody carried one of these, and it was the proportion scale, and it helped you figure out that. Now it's easier simply because when you use the computer, you can just simply like grab something, make it proportionately smaller, and keep moving on. You know, like if I draw a box in Illustrator and I scale that box and then print it out a bunch of times, like I know that the small version is there. So I hope that makes sense. So it's easier, the aspect ratio, but it's good to know because it doesn't always, you know, translate properly, you know. Spatial relationships. Proportion extends to the spatial relationships between elements. Yes, of course. This will play, this spatial relationship will maybe play a big part in your project, in the proportion project, excuse me, not the research, but the project. This is a fun one. This is where it becomes fun, you know, and playing around with that. This can fool people. Cropping and framing. You take a standard picture and cut everything out, where you crop it and zoom in on it. It's going to look so different. It's bringing in a different world. We're only seeing one part of the intended purpose. And by doing that, you change what people see. I mean, there's a whole section, you know, it was a beginning section in the book. I'll see if I can do this quickly. No, I wanted her. If I do this and this. So if you do that and that on this image, it just looks normal. Like, it is like, oh, she's like, I don't know, maybe crawling and looking at something. But then and so all that other information is cropped up. but then we do this. And then now it's like, oh my God, like look at all that's happening. And that's all just due to cropping and framing. So you can really change the way your image looks, how people see it by zooming in and only, showing a portion or something like that. And then it's good. Like I bring in architectural proportion. This is huge. This is the Greeks. The Greeks. I want to say this was pre-graphic design, as we see graphic design, from the printed word, but architectural proportion where this started, like columns, doors, like the Greeks had all these, their columns were like bulged in the middle. So visually they'd look straight when you're looking at it from a distance. Like they had so much, invested in proportion and having their buildings look proportional. But so when you built them, they weren't proportional, but it looked correct. So it's all these weird things, like they tried to take perspective out of their buildings. And so when you saw the building, it looked perfectly straight, because if you look at a building, you look outside and you see a perspective and things get smaller, and they're trying to reverse that. It's very cool, very crazy stuff that they've done in the past. So super cool stuff. Let's peruse some examples here. Well, what are we going to talk about? There's a huge garage sale. I like this piece here because of this mix match, and it's not a mix match, but here multifamily isn't big, but it's in the middle. So we have huge garage sale. So if my takeaway is reading this, my secondary, even though it's in the middle of these, is multifamily. But all I need to do is, if I saw this, and again, it's like every once in a while when you're working, step away from your computer, back up. I do that when working. Sometimes I'll stand up and like kind of go across the room and look from afar and be like, okay, what am I reading? Well, I need to read huge and I need to read garage sale. Kind of secondary, even though it is supposed to read huge multifamily garage sale, if anybody just glanced at it, they need to see this and this. And then this is secondary. That's like, frosting on the cake, as they say. It's like, oh, it's multifamily, so there's going to be a lot more stuff than normal. So that's what's happening. And then, we have these giant arrows, which are all black, that point up and down, which are, help out as well. But again, huge. Why not shout it to the world? So I love that kind of stuff. Think about this for reverse proportion when we got to do it. Where is she? Where are we? Where are they? Right? So if we were to back out and move the camera up, we would end up with a lady in proportion to the guys. And if in proportion, maybe around like this big, like. So if the poster was like this, and then it had all the, the text there, it's not dramatic, right? It would be like, oh, it's like somebody took a photograph of some people fighting and this woman, I'm not sure what she's doing, but she's sneaking away. But she wouldn't be the main focus anymore. She would just be blended in, and then we'd probably be more involved with the people fighting. So got to think about that. So her being big really emphasizes like, oh, this is about her, and then it's 7 savage punks on a weekend binge of violence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, there's 9 of them. There's 10 of them. There's 10 people in this, so I don't know. But understanding this changes the dynamic of the piece in such a different way that we have a central character now, cool and the crazy. We have the text, which beautifully, look at that color matching right there. So great. And it works in such a great way. And this is like that reverse. We don't feel like, wait, is she a giant? She must be a giant. But you couldn't get this. If you tried to take this as a photograph, this would be darn near impossible. It only works as an illustration. So, but I'm not sitting here being like, why is she so big? Like, I get why she's big. And like, she's in the forefront and the guys are in the background and they're framing things that are happening, you know, with her body. So really rad. Reversal of that proportion would be way different. Like like we said, if she was just, doing this, it'd be a lame poster. It wouldn't read as well. The golden mean, the golden ratio, the golden. So this is it. We start with this box here. This box becomes this box, becomes this box, becomes this box, becomes this box. And they're all within the same proportion. Believe. It's what it's supposed to be. So like if I do this, I'm not sure if I can fully do it. And then I move it here. I think it flips. There. So that is that. And then I move it here. And I'll scale it again. When I'm scaling, I'm holding down Shift, of course. Come on. See that? So every time I do it, this square is that square, is that square, is that square. So that's the illustration of it. And then how this works. So in general, except for this little top part, this could be said to be broken out. The main purpose of this design is right here. I want to buy this garment. Second, it comes in white. This is a blocking. It comes in white. I pick my size and I know my price and I can add the bag, right? And then third is, do I want to share? Do I hit play? I don't know what that for. And fourth is save this for later. Though I would say, well, save it for later gets its own kind of sort of golden ratio area here. Sorry, I'm writing orange on orange. But it's in generalization. So this is one of those things. Is it ever perfect? No. It's not exactly perfect, but it works. It shows that this kind of does have that design standing of a golden ratio. Yeah, there's a little bit above there. This square is above here. But we can see that. So this is where people get nuts. Let's see some nuts people. One is everybody talks about the Apple logo and the Apple logo using the golden ratio. They break it down. There's people who sit there and break it down like this image and like, here it is. And you use all these things and tip it and turn it. To me, it's just like searching. And then there's this one, which I am not 100% if this is actually an image like from them. It's very clean and clear. But it's just a bunch of circles, and you could, it's not a big deal. Like, it's just circles and circles, and then it's a design thing, and it's a way to smooth things and make it symmetrical. That's really all it is. But then, people like have this one, or then the Pepsi logo and the golden ratio, and then they found it in the Google logo, and they found it in the Toyota logo, and they found it in, this is like beyond belief. They found it in the Twitter logo. Like, this is just I think people go in old Twitter logo. Like, it's designed and then it's cleaned up with circles, but people just go nuts, about this. And I find it funny, but I'm glad people are so invested in graphic design and the way it looks and being able to disseminate. It's like art history people. It's like historic, like it's like me jibber jabbering about all this, what? So that's what it is. Like I could talk for hours about this and you'd be like, oh my God, he's over analyzing. But you just find more and more parts. Here, we look at this piece right here. Proportion. They want us to look at that image, don't they? They want us to, like me, I'm jealous. It's like, looks like it's some gorgeous house on a mountain with this indoor outdoor swimming pool, it looks like. And like, what? It's just gorgeous. Like I just stay here. And then all the other information is here. Very small. And they want it like, but they did it also, it is correct in that 1, 2, 3, 4. So we stay here. Oh boy, oh boy. Oh wait, who is this? Colin Hughes. Oh, and then we read here, and then we read here. But I mean, the first thing I'm looking at this, the only 2 takeaways you really need to do is see this image and then see this. So, pretty cool. And then this, the final, the ominous. In a world. Love it. Like this design trope, I guess we could call it, is used so much in movie posters. Well, yeah. Here it is. And this is in a world, like they're small and there's this big looming mountains ahead of us. And then like they're on this ground. They're on the ground. And it, these lines are indicative of for me of like city lights or like movement and those lights and like what's happening. But it's just this ominous. Oh, and then the moon's up here. We can see the moon up there too. All in proportion. Like if they're big, 2 big people. Hello. just there. We'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just kind of two people standing around, but we made them small, so everything is looming and big. And then we got that moon. The moon's coming through the mountains. That's weird. So how's that showing through? And then, like I said, when I look down here, I feel like maybe there's some depth in there. But again, it's just proportion, and it's proportion creating a emotional feel. And because that created an emotional feel, we remember it. And that's the other key takeaway. We get people to remember stuff by getting an emotional attachment. All right. Let's look at. So research, you know what to do. Easy peasy. Let's open up this. Let's go to here. So we know the research. You guys are knocking it out of the park. Always double check. Make sure you're centering things and aligning things. And that's all part about being that graphic designer. Things are looking great. Proportion project. All right. Create 3 compositions to define reverse proportion in design. How do we do reverse proportion? I think I have it open. I think it's very much like the movement one. Big ball flying to small house. That's like reverse proportion. Or we have, I have another one. Jumbo shrimp. Get it? Everybody, that's an old, I forget the name of that. When you say something like that, like jumbo shrimp, it's got a word name. Or another one here. Like simple. And it's like funny, like, and it depends on where you draw it. If I draw that line, but like, if you draw like a tree and a house, maybe, oh, maybe that's a tree, but just because of where it is, what if I change the shape of it to this, and it's broccoli and not a tree, and that's a house? But because of the thought, like, we're playing with this reverse proportion, and I can make a piece of broccoli look like a tree because of the way I placed it in the image, and then it's like kind of like that reverse proportion. If something is big comparatively, that a reference point that we have, what's the reference point and what's that reversal? So I hope that makes sense. Like, you can do so many goofy things with like this reverse proportion. Like, what's the big one? What's the small one? Or you could do the we do it all the time. You see it all the time. Like, oh no. And then it's the glint. So it's like an eyeball. We think it's an eyeball. But then we zoom in and closer. Oh, I need this. Oh, wait, it should work. It's like, it's like the world. And so, like, the glint in the eyeball is actually a world going around the sun. But like, we tricked you. It's like reverse. Like, what? Where did that? Like, it's something small that's big and small. So have some fun with that. Like, play around. Like, you come up with 3, do your best with these little drawings. You practice, and design. It's always a good thing to do that. So have some fun with that. That's the reverse proportion. Now, let's talk about your poster. Computer rough draft. So, and I'll repeat this again on Thursday about the design one, is now we're bringing it in. You're bringing your sketch into that initial poster layout that you did. You did it when we were doing layouts, and it's the Illustrator one, and it's to the correct size. It has all the layers on there for you already, and it has a layer that says your sketch. So choose your favorite rough draft sketch and literally drop that in, put it in, place that in, and then start to put your stuff on top of it. Don't guess. There are many times that I can see in the design, and I look at it from, one to the other, and I think in my head that, and I mean, the student example, like, we're beyond like really needing the student examples, but it's just like, here's what they have, like, blah, blah. They changed it around, but I think I even initially questioned this one, was like, oh, what happened to some of the stuff? And we talked it through, but start with that sketch. Drop this in and place everything on top of it, because what you drew here, I guarantee you, is looser, more free looking than if you were to start and try to estimate. If you think you're like, oh no, it'll be quicker for me to just do it. This is a 1-minute process to open a layer, place the image in, use that 1 minute to your advantage to have a better design. Now, but Joel, what about you? Yes, I do it. I have some weird examples. All right. I'll show you some personal examples too. Here, I did a drawing, and this isn't my initial drawing. Like, this drawing was like a bunch of drawings. I was doing something for somebody, and I brought the drawing in because I needed the vector. Right? So why wouldn't I bring that in and do my vector on top? It doesn't match exactly, but it's darn close. But why would I try to just do it on my own when I already did it? Does that make sense? I'm just tracing. I'm tracing something I already did. It's got everything I need, but I wouldn't just have this on a piece of paper next to me and like guess. That would be impossible. I already did this. I know what I want. Bring it in and draw on top of it and be done. Like so simple, so easy. That's what I'm talking about. So a simple little drawing. Here, I'm going to zoom out. Here are all my drawings, right? And I knew I wanted this one. And I faded it out on purpose. But you can see all my lines, and I got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think I own this drawing anymore, but it's in approximate proportions. And I know that these are called traces, and I knew what I wanted. And then so I just started putting stuff on top of it. And there I have it. Everything fits where it's supposed to fit. It's all on here. And I use the sketch as the starting point because in my sketch, I knew how I wanted things proportioned. And that's a big thing about proportion. That gets lost if you don't bring in your sketch, especially if you have a great sketch. It's just like, wow, my design is done. And now I'm just refining it in the computer. So, and you get the proportions right. You can see it. I can see it when you don't do that. And I'll look at it and be like, something's off. What happened between your sketch and the digital version of it? And if you're like, well, I didn't use that, I'll be like, I can tell. I can really tell things aren't where they're supposed to be. And there's something more, loose and better with the sketch. And I'm not saying and look how quick this sketch is too. This is sometimes all you need to do. Here's my idea. I got it down. I'm going to bring it in and go on top of it instead of me guessing. Why spend some time guessing and looking down and up, down and up, down and up? Just bring it in and be like, all right, here I go. Boom, and you fix them up. Oh, these were too tight. Big deal. I know where I want the curves, the straights, and this again. Great. You work on top of that. Here's one. I did a little piece for my house for the holidays, and there's screenshots from the Grinch along with some sketches, right? I whipped this up. It's got to be this big by this big. I kind of want this, this, and this. I did this. This is drew this out with some video, and then I worked on top of it to get this. But I wasn't going to go in Illustrator and just start blindly trying to do this. I started with a sketch, brought it into Illustrator, and then worked on top of it to get what I want. And because that takes out that whole idea. Because this sketch then, I had probably a ton of layers on it. I could move things around, do it quickly, figure out what I liked, what I didn't like, erase some things, move some things, added some things, added the pole, got it exactly where I wanted. And then I went in and did the final work. So that's how that works. Here's another one. Here's a sketch. All right. This is for design. This is very similar to what your Thursday project. I did a sketch. Okay, I want pushpin up here. There's going to be about a who. I want these images. I knew my images. I had everything. It's like I already did my research. But how do I want them arranged? And then there we go. Start with my chicken, right? Put in my images. My images are all where my images are for the most part, right? I added another one. Big deal. Or no, overlaps. But I kind of know what's going on. Got my text, crop marks, margin, and then some background info. And I turned that off. Because I had that sketch, I was able to just place things in. I knew exactly where I want them to go. If you don't have that sketch, you're starting blind. Like, okay, where was the chicken? Okay, how far did it go? Don't even think. It goes right about there. And you adjust as need be. Oh, this chicken's a little different. Big deal. So use those sketches, bring them in, and then just start assembling. It's assembly line. But the big, like, thinking, creative process does happen in that sketch phase. And it's quick. Like, that's the quick part. Sketching, I got to say this correctly. Designing into Illustrator without an idea takes twice as long, at least. And when I say that, I want to be clear, like, you can digitally sketch, but if I was just trying to think about this design, and putting it together, I would be stumbling because I'd be like, okay, I want the title up here. Then I'd be stopping, typing in Pushpin, and then like doing the stuff rather than me just sketching it. Like, I think I want it to say Pushpin here, about and who. I'll figure out the font, like that comes secondary. So there's a beauty. And because if you just go in, you're like, well, maybe I don't want I did 6 renditions of this in 30 minutes. I couldn't do 6 renditions of this on the computer in the same amount of time. It's just not possible, so there is a beauty. So even if you say like, I can't sketch, I can't draw, just doing this amount of work saves you probably an hour of monkeying around. So cool. I think that's it. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All right. Well, thank you very much. I will talk to you on Thursday. Thursday, we will be going over, what are we going to do? Pattern. That's a fun one. And yeah, thank you very much. Talk to you Thursday. You know how to get a hold of me. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, more than happy to help. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.